A frustrating weekend. There's no better word than frustration, really, for what happened in Melbourne. Everyone is trying their absolute utmost, and to walk away with no points really doesn't do service to the car we have, the performance that it showed on track at various points. Alex was obviously right up there in a strong points position, but ultimately, unfortunately, as a result of an accident, walked away with nothing. And with Logan, we tried various things, but that first red flag really put him on the back foot as well with the tyre strategy we decided to have. We keep our heads, however, held high, simply for the reason that frustration is because we have a car that can fight for points and will fight for points at future races. What happened with Alex is very difficult to explain when you first look at the data. He went through turn 5, then into turn 6, slower than he had on the previous lap, and yet the rear came round immediately and he lost control of the car. There's nothing he could have done to correct that. But actually the incident happened a few laps before and was building up towards that moment. To explain how was happening, turn 5 is a corner that in qualifying is very easily flat, but in the race it's quite difficult to do that. And we had expected him to have a lift all the way through there. However, the car was working well, and what we noticed is in fact he was able to just about go through that turn. And that changes how you want to deploy your energy across the lap, and we changed systems to adapt for that. As a result, on the lap where unfortunately his race ended, he was actually carrying something close to 10 kilometers an hour more through turn 5 than he had on the previous lap. Doesn't sound like a lot, but in the world of tyres, tyre energy and tyre temperatures, that makes a large difference. He went through and actually realised it was a little bit too much speed for that corner and had to lift ever so slightly, but he ran out wide. And when he ran out wide, that rear left tyre was now actually just oscillating on the curb on exit. Again, something that probably looks normal and seems normal, but when your tyre temperatures are right at the limit, and they will be with more speed through the corner, and they will be again through running on the curb, it's a very high frequency input. As he turned into turn 6, he just simply did not have the rear grip that he was expecting to have previously, and that's what ended his race. Logan, I think it's fair to say, had qualified out of position for the performance of the car. And when you're in that circumstance and situation, it's very difficult at a place like Melbourne to recover and go back up through the field. You saw the difficulty that Perez had with the car performance that he had. And with Logan, what we had to look at doing is offsetting ourselves to everyone else. It was mentioned in the question, it was different to everyone else. There was an intent and purpose behind that. You have to sometimes offset yourself to create opportunity. We started on that hard tyre and the intention was to go very, very long on it. There's plenty normally of VSCs and safety cars in Melbourne. What happened though is, unfortunately, as the result of Alex and the red flag that came out, starting on that harder compound is completely compromised now. Everyone else that was able to start on the softer compound was able to fit the hard, and they could run to the end of the race if they wanted to. But in Logan's case, we had no choice. We either had to refit exactly the same tyre or put a medium on. And we opted, it was very close on simulations, but we opted to put that medium on the car and try and stop one more time. We suffered what's called graining. You can see it if you look at the images on TV, it's on the front left tyre, you can see a darkened patch. That's fundamentally when the tyre isn't working in the way that we would like it to. And that became worse and worse. You saw Logan's pace drop off, and ultimately we had to stop one more time, fit the harder tyre and go to the end. In qualifying, I think we set 7 purple sector 2s, purple being that it's the fastest time that any competitor had set, and I think we ultimately had the fastest sector 2 time. And the question was, did we expect that? No. I think with a car like ours, we're fortunate to be there or thereabouts. It's unusual to see us purple. But if we break down the sector, a lot of it is a straight line and there's one corner, turn 6. Well, what's interesting is through turn 6, we were quite competitive as well. So it's not just our car was fast in a straight line, but also that one turn that denotes that sector was also competitive. Points were there for the taking with Alex. He was on merit. No one had gifted it to him in a strong point scoring position. There's no doubt that behind Alex there was 2 Alpines and Perez that were very quick on race pace, but that all aside, Before the incident, he was in control of the race. He'd introduced what we call lift and coast, which is a method of basically looking after the tyres. He was comfortable, didn't feel under pressure. And I have no doubt that we would have walked away with a good point score as a result. We're 3 races in, as mentioned, and what's clear is that of the first 3 races, we have been in a position to fight for points at all of them. In Bahrain, obviously translating to a point. In the case of Melbourne, unfortunately walking away with absolutely nothing. But even in Saudi, there were moments where clearly we could do a very competitive time and be in and amongst the mix. It needs perfection, but the car is there. And it gives me hope as we go forward for the remainder of the season that we have a car that will be there or thereabouts. We are doing our utmost to develop it, but by keeping also an eye on the future. We cannot lose the target that we want to be a step more competitive next year and the year afterwards. And the only way you can accomplish that is at the sacrifice of what you have this year within the cost cap. You would have seen in FP1 Logan pulling to the side of the road, and if you look at the video footage again, you may actually see all the dash lights just suddenly cut out. When you see that sort of effect, it's electrical. Something has gone very, very wrong. We took the car apart between FP1 to FP2, but the issue was a result of an electrical failure, and it's not something we could fix properly by the time we got into FP2, so the car was parked. And the next time Logan was on track was FP3. That's highly damaging for a driver that's never been to Melbourne before, and Melbourne is one of these very technical tracks, and every minute on track matters. And from that point onwards, you can see Logan was doing his best to learn and catch back up, but one session missing is still a tremendous amount to make up for. This type of failure is not necessarily uncommon, but it's odd to have after thousands of kilometers of testing. It's something that we absolutely have to get back to root cause on, understand why the failure occurred, and make sure it doesn't happen again. I'll answer the question a little bit indirectly. If you go back through Bahrain, but also Saudi to a certain extent, you can see there are moments where this car can shine. And I think there's moments in Bahrain even that had everything gone absolutely perfectly without issue, we could have just made it into Q3. So to answer the question for Melbourne, but also other races, we always have an expectation that absolutely everything lining up, we have an opportunity to make Q3 on merit. It's a disappointing weekend, as I said before, a frustrating weekend. But actually, as I walk around, everyone's shoulders are held high. We have a car that across 3 tracks that are different in their own characteristics, different tarmacs, different situations, different tyres, has been there or thereabouts fighting for points. And that's something that always will keep you elevated. And the frustration only comes from the fact that we know we haven't delivered the points the car's capable of. I think our heads are very much held high, and I'm certainly looking forward to the future, and I can't wait for Baku. It's clear that we've had a car that's been competitive at the first 3 races. What we've got coming up is Baku, another track again where I think we can be in the fight for points, and Miami. Miami will be a little bit more tough. The car was very competitive there last year, but there's some characteristics of the circuit that aren't necessarily as good for the car as Baku would be. Irrespective of that, we go to the same race with the same attitude every single time, which is we will do our utmost and walk away with a point if it's there on the table for us to take. It's unusual to have the amount of weeks that we have before Baku. In fact, this was a race China, but unfortunately it was cancelled, providing just more opportunity. We always do the same thing, whether it's 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. We are continuously evaluating what happened at previous races and what could we have optimized, have done better. So learning using history as our backbone to it. And we're doing the same after Melbourne. That will allow us to then look forward to what performance can we add to the car across the next few weeks. Now, those programs aren't kicked off within a day and delivered within a week. They had kicked off many weeks ago. But this break just allows us to add just a little bit more performance to the car in this period of time.